FSG, publisher of In Hoffa's Shadow, A Stepfather, A Disappearance in Detroit, and My Search for the Truth by Jack Goldsmith, a gripping insider's tale of Jimmy Hoffa's 35-year relationship with the mob and his disappearance, as told by the stepson of the crime's leading suspect. The Wall Street Journal says In Hoffa's Shadow is compulsively readable, deeply affecting, and truly groundbreaking in its re-examination of the Hoffa case. A monumental achievement. In Hoffa's Shadow is available wherever books are sold.
Happy holidays, everybody, from the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Mad Kwanzaa, and to all you atheists, hello, and welcome to a special presentation of a Radulich and Broadcasting Network premiere podcast, The Long Road to Ruin. We're dusting it off to bring you a show, a topic on a show that I wanted to do in the original Long Road to Ruin run, and we're finally getting around to it. It's one of my favorite holiday trilogies in one of my favorite times of year. I love the Christmas season, Jew that I am, right? It's The Santa Clause, starring Tim Allen. And here to discuss the Santa Clause Trilogy with me tonight, that's the Santa Clause 2, and the Santa Clause, the dumb one, the escape, Santa Clause 3, the Escape Clause. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Sean, you're not. How do you do, sir?
Hello, everybody, and I feel excluded that you do not acknowledge my my observation of Life Day.
Oh. You happy now?
Yes, Lumpy. Yes, I am. You crazy Floridian Wookiee bastard, you. Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to one and all. I'm glad we're finally getting around to this one. Because I was actually thinking the other day about kind of how genuinely tired I've gotten of a certain Christmas trope among our generation. And that is the really trying too hard to kind of needlessly defend certain movies as being Christmas movies.
Oh, this is the Die Hard argument.
And you know, it's one of those that it was kind of amusing about the first handful of times I heard it. But then year after year, people kind of keep bringing it up. Like, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Okay, no. At this point, nobody said that it wasn't. We've all long since agreed. Let me tell you why Die Hard is a Christmas movie. We get it. Okay, you get it. But have you ever stopped to think about why Gremlins is a Christmas movie? Yes, fuck a duck, because it's set at Christmas. We get it. Right now, you're just trying to sound edgy. I pray to God you don't cut yourself too hard. I've kind of longed for the last couple of years to talk about just genuine, actual Christmas movies. And
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Love you, itty bit. My kiddo felt the need to chime in with Nightmare Before Christmas, which is the edgy goth version of "You can't convince me it's not a Christmas movie."
Nobody said
it wasn't Hot Topic. Now ring up my Chemical Romance stickers so I can get out of here.
I'll tell you, not in this household. We watch Nightmare Before Christmas around Halloween. We the Radulich family most prejudiciously and segregationally declare. I feel like I'm one of the Munchkins from the fucking Wizard of Oz. We declare that the Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween movie, which I don't care what other people do, but in this house we watch that movie at Halloween.
Which fine, whatever. My whole point being though, and I'm not saying we kind of go like the full okay boomer argument of whatever happened to Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life. Well, the one problem being it's Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life.
What do you like to watch around Christmas time? We're fans of Mickey's Christmas Carol, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Don't at me. It's amazing.
I've still never seen it. You've been talking about this since we started podcasting, and I have still never seen Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Please see it before it gets fucking remade into some piece of trash.
I remember the very first time you brought that up on a podcast, I just said, Emmett what's what now?
Yeah.
You know what? This is hilarious because for the first time, Carrie, my girlfriend, my future wife, is sitting here listening to only one side of this conversation and not getting to hear the rest of it because I've got my earbuds in because we've had problems before where when I try to use the internal mic on my laptop, it just picks up way too much background noise. And so until I get my new hardware fairly soon that I'm Christmas gifting myself, the workaround is that I'm basically using the cheap dollar store earbuds that I use for gaming. And so she's hearing me rattle off all this stuff on just my site, and she's just like giving me this like look like a confused husky.
I'm guessing
that's having quantum physics explained to it.
I'm guessing she doesn't know Emmett Otter either.
Honey, have you ever heard of Emmett Otter?
No.
Hang on. I have a better question. Has she heard of Dominic the Italian Christmas Donkey?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody, if you were to kind of put our ages on a timeline, we'll do this like Japanese manga style and go from right to left since we're going oldest to youngest. Mark, you're what, 40?
3.
You're 43. Okay. Mark is 43. I just turned 37 on December 2nd. My girlfriend is 32. 33. Yeah. Sorry. So that's the age disparities that I have stuff all the time that I remember from growing up that she simply doesn't. Just because of that 4-year age gap of ours. And then she just pointed out that and the fact that her older sister always took over the TV. But you asked what my favorite Christmas time viewing is.
Yeah.
Mickey's Christmas Carol, that's my damn jam. That's one of my all-time favorites. So there's Mickey's Christmas Carol. I love the first Santa Claus. Jingle All the Way is a great one. Can't go wrong with the first Home Alone. What am I saying? Home Alone 2 wasn't bad. It was alright.
Have you seen Yogi's First Christmas?
I have, and I love Yogi's First Christmas.
That's also a holiday staple in this house.
I feel like I'm missing something. Last year, I will admit I did watch Gremlins last year. I'm not saying Gremlins is not a Christmas movie. I'm just saying quit trying so hard to argue with people who are not arguing with you at this point.
Right. So my kids had never seen the Santa Claus movies, and like I said, I've kind of. When we first started doing Long Road to Ruin, it was one of those where, like, well, we really have to talk about this because when we started pitching ideas for Long Road to Ruin, the overall conversation was the diminishing returns of franchises and trilogies.
That was where we came up with the name.
Yeah. And this one, like, classically follows that pattern of you have this solid first one, and the next one I think actually builds on it and is really good, and then the third one goes off a fucking cliff and kills the whole franchise. And we found that was kind of the pattern with a lot of them. I mean, you have a few that just go, it's just a direct line straight down, but more often than not, it's like good first one, better second one, dives off a cliff third one. Mm-hmm. And this one falls neatly into that. So let's get into the original Santa Claus here. It comes out in 1994. I am a freshman in college when this happens. It had a budget of $22 million, and it kicked butt at the box office at roughly $190 million, I believe, worldwide. And so, as we were talking about before the podcast started, this was Tim Allen at the height of his post home improvement powers.
Mm. Yeah. The only real production notes that I have about this, as you said, made over 144 million in the United States and Canada, another 189 million worldwide, pretty much regarded nowadays as a modern Christmas classic. And by the way, I actually forgot a couple of favorites, so if you'll excuse me. Flintstones Christmas Carol, A Christmas Story, despite the fact that it has been run into the goddamn ground at this point. And National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Cannot go wrong with those three. Anyway, back to my point. Entire movie was shot in Oakville in the Greater Toronto area as a substitute for Lakeside, Illinois. Critically, it has been extremely well received on CinemaScore. It's receives an aggregate A- grade on a scale of A to F. And here's a good one. This movie was the result of some kid racking up a $400 bill to a phone sex line.
Huh?
Well played, sir. Well played. Toward the beginning of the movie, Scott Calvin's estranged wife Laura hands him a piece of paper with her boyfriend Neil's phone number on it. And Scott looks at it and says, 1-800-SPANK-ME. I know that number. Funny thing, that line had to be removed from all home media releases in the United States starting with the 1999 DVD release because in 1996, a kid from Steilacoom, Washington called the actual working phone sex number and racked up a $400 tab.
Well done, sir.
Which in 2018 dollars would be $639, and which, by the way, fuck me, phone sex. There's a relic of a bygone era. That was a thing, kids. That was a thing. Once upon a time, before your Discords and your WhatsApps and your Reddits and sliding into your Twitter DMs, this was a thing. People did sometimes to get their jollies. They actually called a pay-per-minute phone number for someone to talk dirty to them.
Cece, pick up that guitar and talk to me. Sorry, go ahead.
God, and just hear a reference to a phone sex line. God, this dates just how old you and I are, because I remember those being advertised like after 1 a.m. on USA Up All Night.
Like I said, I believe I'm a freshman in college at this point. I'm either a freshman in college or I'm a senior in high school. I honestly don't remember.
Let's see. You're 43.
Yeah.
So yeah, that actually checks out, because if you were, that would have put me in junior high. When on Friday and Saturday nights, that was my thing. I had a TV in my bedroom back in South Dakota. We had cable, and I could flip back and forth between the USA Up All Night double feature, Mystery Science Theater 3000 in syndication, and at a certain point, Monster Vision on TNT with Joe Bob Briggs.
I actually remember that.
God, I miss Monster Vision. I miss that whole trend of movie-based TV blocks. You had Dinner and a Movie, movies for guys who like movies, the greatest title for a programming block ever. But anyway, we talked about how if we got to 90 minutes and then we got severely off track. So before we start pushing the hour-and-a-half mark, Mark, tell us all about the glorious first movie.
It's a fairly simple plot. You have a divorced family here sharing custody of a young child whose name is Charlie. Tim Allen plays his father, Scott Calvin. The mom, who is Laura, played by Wendy Crewson, has remarried a psychiatrist who is played by Judge Reinhold, whose name is Dr. Neil Miller, who wears ugly sweaters. Fantastic. And they've got a thing going where new dad feels like pushing the Santa Claus thing at Charlie's tender age is probably going to do him more harm than good. Scott is still trying to do the work-life balance. I'm going to come back to this because as watching this now as a father of an 8 and a 5-year-old, I now sympathize with Scott Calvin. So he has his son for Christmas Eve. He's supposed to give the kid back Christmas Day. And what happens is Santa comes, as he does, on Christmas Eve. And he gets on the roof. And, of course, they hear such a clatter. And, of course, Charlie has now heard the night before Christmas. And they do what is the longest bit in movie history over what the hell a clatter is. Boy, that went on forever. If you've never wanted to punch your kid to sleep, that was a good example of it. Just go to bed already.
Dude, it wasn't that bad. It was cute.
Anywho. So, after hearing the night before Christmas and going through the whole clatter, but then they hear a clatter and it's Santa. And they go outside and Santa, of course, takes a slip and fall and goes off the roof, and he disappears like Yoda and leaves his jacket behind. At the insistence of his young son, Charlie, Tim Allen grabs Santa's coat, and he puts it on as the card included with the coat tells him to do, and now he's Santa. They go to the North Pole. There's a giant exposition dump about what Santa is and what it means to have become Santa and how that will affect his life. And the movie from that point on is, one, Tim Allen trying to resist Santa magic and the transformation therein. And then, two, finally kind of accepting it and full-on taking on the role of Santa. But there's the problem of the rest of his life happening around him. This culminates in him and Charlie. There's like a back and forth between them and the North Pole where ultimately it is revealed to Charlie's mother and his stepfather that Scott is in fact really Santa and not just a crazy person who kidnapped Charlie earlier in the movie. Santa and Charlie deliver all the gifts to the good little boys and girls. Neil is made to believe as he receives the gift that he had been longing for as a child, as does Laura. When she stopped believing in Santa, now her faith in the magical elf has been reignited, and they all live happily ever after. And that's basically the movie. Let me get this out of the way right now. This first act, where it's kind of funny because they don't, and I don't know if this is to the movie's credit or not. I was really struggling with this. Let's see what you think of this. Scott's supposed to be kind of a heel. There's a lot of inference and implication that, he's working at this toy company, and it's the we talked about this with Jingle All the Way as well. I think it was last year for On Trial, where like there's just a trope in Hollywood, and it really annoys me about the father who's trying to take care of his family, but there are work demands on him that take him away, and it's sometimes despite their best efforts, it's hard to get away from work stuff when it won't stop. And you have responsibilities. You have responsibilities to your company. You have responsibility to your employees. So it can be hard. Not every person who has a job has that kind of pressure on them, but many do. Many of the most successful people do. But the father is always made to be a heel. And in this particular instance, Tim Allen is portrayed as trying his level best to entertain his son and be a good dad. There's a whole what this movie series does is like the first half an hour to 45 minutes is always like a comedy of errors. It's just one thing after another until there's something happens and things shift in a different direction. There's a pattern with this. In this particular case, you have Tim Allen trying to make Christmas Eve dinner. Of course, he has no planning because this is not the first thing on his mind. So he burns a turkey, and they have to go eat at Denny's and all of that. And then it was so funny. We were watching this, and my wife loves this scene. of just Tim Allen looking around with all the other, like, failed dads. Just forlorn looking kids and dads just, I tried. And again, as an audience member, you're made to, like, his transition to Santa Claus is his salvation. I just didn't think he was that bad of a guy. I'm like, I know that's, you're not supposed to think that. You're supposed to say, hey, Scott Calvin, you need the spirit of Christmas and spend more time with your kid and get your priorities straight. It's like, they didn't make him, he's not Scrooge McDuck. You know what I mean? No, he's not like kicking homeless people and shit. Mm-hmm. He, like I said, seems like a decent fella, and the only thing they show him is, he makes toys that may or may not be inherent with the spirit of Christmas in them, I guess. But okay, and so so that whole first act, and I'm gonna take a pause here and let you chime in. So that whole first act, I don't know if they do the best job of presenting him in the best negative light. I know it's an oxymoron, but the best negative lights to really make the transition that much more effective. I struggle with this.
And I have to correct myself. I said at first this was Tim Allen at the height of his post-Home Improvement power. I was way wrong. This was 1994. This was actually squarely in the middle of Home Improvement success. Home Improvement didn't end until 1999, so I apologize for that. But, the one place where Tim is kind of at his funniest, and you have to remember, this was during the period when he was not yet an insufferable douchebag. This was not at the point where Last Man Standing so obviously was canceled because it was a conspiracy to screw over a conservative in Hollywood, as opposed to the show just not being all that funny. This was, and I will be the first to admit, his humor at the time, it doesn't age well, especially if you go back and listen to his stand-up. But it was at a time when he was a stand-up comic who had a hit show, and he had a certain shtick that he was able to ride all.
Can I comment on that for a second?
As a lot.
He was the other Jeff Foxworthy. Jeff Foxworthy had one bit, and now granted, as he gets older, I mean he gets eclipsed by the other three, two of the other three guys. Larry the Cable Guy and Ron White go like, I think as far as in comedy itself, I think go a lot further than Jeff Foxworthy does. I think Jeff Foxworthy even joked about like opening for Larry the Cable Guy at one point.
Well, which astounds me because I mean, Larry the Cable Guy is a one-note joke, and that one note is a flat, wet trumpet fart.
In your opinion, sir, that man captures the heart of America, which tells you everything you need to know.
And when it comes to Ron White, that's just the baffling appeal of a man who is a Dennis Leary ripoff, who in turn stole his best material from his late best friend. So he's a ripoff of a ripoff artist.
The point of comparison that I was making is Tim Allen. He got famous because he was doing like the monkey grunts.
The monkey grunts, the whole Bill Hicks. That was the friend of Dennis Leary's name. Sorry, just if I hadn't gotten that, it was going to stick in my craw the rest of the show.
Oh, you didn't hear me? I said it.
I didn't. I guess I'm sorry. My apologies. Tim did the whole, manly man confused by the women folk and the children, and I sweat testosterone.
His thing was dad humor. It was
basically.
It was your dad has a tool belt and he fixes things around the house, and he's kind of a lumbering idiot. That was his whole routine. Like, that's why I was saying he was comparing like to Jeff Foxworthy, whose whole thing was the "you might be a redneck" material. He does more, and if you listen to more of Jeff Foxworthy stuff, he does. You know, it becomes more of a snapshot of a Southern lifestyle kind of a thing. But basically, it was kind of the same trajectory. They were both. I mean, they may have done dirty stuff in different points of their career at different times, but when they got where they got famous and where their trajectory sort of like takes off is where they got really, really clean, really, really family friendly, and continually hit, like a death metal song, just hit the same note repeatedly.
Well, right, but the part that helped him stay so family friendly was he was able to kind of take some of the raunch out of his stand-up humor, and instead just tap generally into the whole kind of confused, doing his best, but gosh, I just don't understand. I'm so flustered by my family routine.
Right.
He was able to kind of dumb it down to that, and that's kind of how he was able to make that transition from playing the blue collar guy, the blue collar, hapless, clumsy home improvement show host with the kind of prim and proper educated wife, to, in basically 2 movies in a row, in the Santa Clause and Jungle to Jungle, playing a white collar a successful white collar executive who, is, struggling and kind of in the weeds, but in this case it just happens to be the slightly more, I guess, kind of sympathetic instance of how do I balance my career, which is obviously important to me, with my family, who I also dearly love. And that's kind of what's going on here. And as I said, it's the same thing that Tim did in Jungle to Jungle. It's the same thing that Arnold did so well in Jingle All the Way. It's kind of a trope among holiday movies. It's almost like you're kind of making them Ebenezer Scrooge without actually being Ebenezer Scrooge.
I don't even think this one does as good of a job as Jingle All the Way did, because I remember talking about that when we did the On Trial, and I really felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger may have been doing his level best, but he was still kind of a shitty dude who needed an attitude change. I don't get that from Scott Calvin.
No, you don't feel that way at all for him. Again, he's a guy that's kind of doing his best, and you can kind of look at him, and I guess you're supposed to dislike him because he's kind of numb to the Christmas spirit, but ultimately you just kind of end up feeling bad for the guy, because it's not that he's necessarily become a bad person. It's that he's in the thick of a divorce. He's having to watch his ex-wife move on to somebody else, which, that's a rough position to be in. Lots of insecurities that come with that. He kind of feels like he sort of has to kind of one up Neil a little bit to be a good dad, when really, Neil's got nothing against him. It's not like Neil is Phil Hartman in Jingle All the Way.
Yeah.
It's not even like Neil is his shitty banker character from Gremlins. He's just a guy who just kind of wants to keep the peace and happens to have a little bit of a difference of opinion. I mean, it's something that myself, as a stepdad to be, I kind of ran into early on when Carrie and I got together. So I mean, it's relatable. It's relatable, as you put it. And by all means, here, hang on. I'll grab my Diet Mountain Dew here. Okay, guys, drinking game time. Drinking game. Not game pan. Drinking game time. We're about to make a wrestling reference. the heel turn was not pronounced enough to mean shit when you turn the guy face. You know, if it's gonna have any impact, you can't have Ric Flair or Harley Race out there still playing the heel character and kind of reluctantly high-fiving people on their way to the ring. No, you have to have them slapping babies out of mothers' hands. You know, you have to have them tearing up signs, getting cheap heat by demeaning the local culture. I mean, in this case, it's more like we're supposed to hate. It's almost like he's more like Stone Cold Steve Austin in a loose sense of, yeah, I guess we're told we're supposed to be rooting against him and he's supposed to be a bad guy, but no, this guy's okay. We're good with him.
I know, you know. I know. I made the joke about like, ugh, you know, chill. I think I've just been there as a dad, where you're like, please go to sleep. You need to go to sleep.
Go the fuck to sleep.
Go the fuck to sleep. For the love of God, get to your room already. I don't need to hear your dissertation on Mario Kart.
Hey, we have a 15-year-old we have to say that to sometimes. So I feel
you know, and so it's like I'm sitting here and I'm just twisting myself in knots because on the one hand, the actor who plays Charlie, Eric Lloyd, is adorable. He has a wonderful haircut. He has the cutest little pinchable face, and you know, child acting is one of those dangerous things with a movie. It can kill a movie dead. And I think he, with the material he's given, does his level best. And he doesn't take me out of the movie or anything. He's not a bad performer. But what he's given to work with is nagging child. And children can be like that. And it's like, well, you accept it because they're a child. And, you know, you as the parent, it's up to you to moderate that and deal with it. I think you as an audience member, I'm not entirely sure what your reaction was supposed to be. Because my reaction was wanting to jump through the screen and throttle that child. But just because like I've been there, I have absolutely been there, and I think like it just pegged that frustration. On the other hand, I think realistically, I think what they were going for is like, look, this child embodies innocence and the spirit of Christmas, and I could not get there. That might just be a personal thing, but I was having such difficulties with Charlie in the first act of this movie. I was fine with it towards the end. And by that point, they were dealing with a whole other different problem in the movie. But everything leading up to him taking the Santa jacket, I just struggled so much with.
It misses the mark. I see where they were trying to go, and it was a good idea, but they just didn't quite fully commit to it. But fortunately, I would go so far as to say that just about everything that comes after more than makes up for it.
You're not wrong, and that's why like I will never say the Santa Clause is a bad movie. I love it. I think it's a great movie. I think that first act, though, the intention is the child is innocent. The Scott's the heel, but he goes through this change, this metamorphosis, beginning with taking on the Santa. And it's the transition to Santa teaches him the meaning of Christmas and family, and these are the lessons of that movie. And I'm with it. And I think from the Santa jacket on, the movie works and hits all the notes it's supposed to. That first half an hour, though, it's a bit pitchy, dog. Like they don't do enough with Calvin. They overdo it with the kid. And even the mom and Neil, I almost feel are like caricatures of what they're supposed to be. And then I think as the movie settles, everyone else kind of settles into their roles, and the acting isn't quite so pitchy. But yeah, that first half an hour is a bit much to get through. So let's talk about the second element of this movie that, if it doesn't work, the whole thing sort of just falls apart. The North Pole. Santa's workshop, there's an element of world building and exposition dumping that has to happen. You have to understand what it means to be Santa, as far in terms of metamorphosis, the magic, the responsibility, all of that. So that all has to get explained by acting great David Krumholtz, who plays Bernard the Head Elf. Fantastic. And so there's that. Plus, there's also the look of the North Pole. I, for one, thought for a movie as cheaply as this one was made, and for what looked clearly like a stage set, and it really looked more and more like a stage set as the movies continue, in my opinion. But I wouldn't go as far as to say like it looks like almost like theme park stage set. I think but it does just enough to get me there and leave me in the movie and think, well, this is a magical place that I've been transported to. It's okay. It is serviceable for this movie. But I think when you think in terms of Elseworld, otherworldly, with like Lord of the Rings being at like one end and, I don't know, Plan 9 from Outer Space being at the other, this one sits right in the middle. What did you think of the world building and the exposition and the look of the North Pole?
I think it was what it needed to be. I mean, listen, frankly, I know there are going to be people out there, kind of the Hallmark Hall of Fame variety, if you will, who will want the real classic kind of Coca-Cola commercial-esque looking North Pole. But the thing is, you also kind of have to give it a little bit of pizzazz that's going to make it something that believably a kid who's kind of growing up when the movie takes place is going to be genuinely impressed by. You kind of can't go Mall Santa's Village with it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to look at a kid Charlie's age, a little bit emotionally stunted or not, is going to probably look at that and just think, crikey, this place kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Upgrade, Santa.
This is
I know
magical.
you can afford it. Yeah, exactly. So you have to kind of make it a little bit modernized, and it's kind of believable that as the rest of the world's technology steps up, Santa's got to upgrade and evolve his own operation in order to keep up. So, yeah, it makes sense that there would be some efficiency innovations. If for no other reason than, just pure quality of life. It may seem a little ridiculous compared to what we all kind of grew up seeing, but I was fine with it. And again, we're not exactly talking about James Cameron and Avatar here. It's a Disney $22 million budget family movie,
right?
And frankly, in terms of staying within the budget and things still really looking pretty good and fun, and like someplace that would take Charlie's breath away, it works for the tone of the movie. It just didn't need to be the Polar Express.
What did you think of the kids as elves, which I thought was a unique gimmick and really fun? And I'll tell you, the handful of full on like star performances. You have Bernard the Elf. You had Paige Tamata, who's I love her as Judy the Elf. This girl mastered acting with her face very, very young, and she is stupendous.
Oh, she was an absolute treat. I loved it. I loved the supporting cast. I loved the elves because again, nobody wanted Santa Claus Conquers the Martians here. It needed to have a little more personality, maybe a little more zing, and a little less, in the words of Seymour Skinner, classic mirth making. to kind of fully get it over and really connect and just everybody, all the elves kind of did their jobs without coming across as obnoxious or just trying to just munch on the scenery.
Yeah.
With every single shot.
I accept them as elves because the movie tells me they're elves, but they seemed all like, happy kids working in Santa's workshop with pointy ears. They may as well have been Vulcans for all I knew. But they all look like they're having a great time. Like I don't think there's a single kid there that would have cared if they got a paycheck. Like they look like they were just like, I get to be in the Santa Claus movie and dress like an elf and hang out with a guy who looks like Santa. Fantastic.
Well, and the nice thing was they did it without kind of doing the Minions or the Ewoks thing.
Yeah.
Where they end up just fucking upstaging everything else that's going around them, to where you're paying more attention to what the little furry forest critter or the insane babbling mutant corn nugget is doing than the plot that's actually kind of developing around them.
None of the kids gives a really pitchy performance either, to where like it just seems like they're some kids have dialogue reading like they're reading a hostage letter, and I didn't get any of that from this. They all, I mean, look, none of them are going to be winning any Academy Awards, but And I'm not even talking like the main speaking elves. There's a couple that like give a line here or there, like here's Coco, Santa. Like everyone sounds fine, They sound like little kids, but they are. There was no getting around that. But nobody gives a line reading to where I like will openly laugh because it's so bad, which has happened in other movies. So, before we move on to the Santa Clause 2, I mean the rest of it, Tim Allen. There's a long gags of Tim Allen trying to work back the magic, and it has zero effect. And those are all funny sight gags. Shaves, the beard comes back. Dyes his hair, the beard, his hair turns white. He running on the treadmill. He is in perfect health despite a wobbling belly. That sort of thing. The bit in the conference room is hysterical. It's like one of those where it gets close to cringy, but I didn't feel the urge to fast forward it. It's still funny to me. Especially everyone ordering salads, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just have a nibble." It's like getting a hot fudge sundae, and they're all just staring at him in horror. And then the bit with the tank, like without overplaying it or relying on special effects or being too showy, Tim Allen, I thought, played the like dichotomy of a split personality pretty well. And this isn't a descent into madness. His personality and his mind is turning into Santa little by little. And so like he has moments that are Scott, but he's overwhelmed by these other moments that are Santa many times in the same moment. And so just as an example, you have the bit in the conference room where he's just overwhelmed by the spirit of Santa, and it all comes out in this criticism of the Total Tank, which, by the way, is an awesome toy, and I would have totally gotten one for Jonas. There was a period where I was looking for one like that.
The thing that I like most about it is you watch Tim Allen in this, and granted, I mean, let's kind of call a spade here. In terms of character work, Tim Allen is never exactly going to be Jim Carrey. He's never going to be Robin Williams. But at the very least, you watch this and you never feel like you're watching a Home Improvement Christmas special.
No, and by the same token, had he been one of the classic overactors where he was banging the scenery, I don't think the movie would have worked as well.
Yeah, he doesn't spend half the movie doing that doofy fucking grunt and the monkey noise. I'm not sure he even busts those out once.
He does. He does. He does one, and he doesn't, and then he doesn't do it for the rest of the movie, and it's fine. It's one of those where it's like a wink to the audience, and then they move on.
and wasn't he like talking to the reindeer or something?
Maybe.
When he did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, okay, that at least kind of makes sense. He's talking to an animal, and yeah, it was one little wink of fan service, and then it's back to business.
Right.
I at least admired that much, and again, it's not the testosterone bukkake fan humor, or dad humor rather, fan humor.
That's a different movie.
So many jokes, so many jokes that I'm foregoing right now. But he's at least kind of trying to stray away from that for a little bit. He may kind of generally have one thing that he does really well in terms of acting, from Home Improvement right up to, well, like I said, Last Man Standing. But here he at least kind of colors it a little bit with some warmth. And I got to hand it to him for that.
There are, just kind of closing out here, there are some lines in this. I wanted to do a comparison. So you have the bit in the boardroom, but then there's the bit at the end of the movie where he's, at this point he's been accused of like kidnapping his son and being like, a schizophrenic, essentially. He's like just paranoid, delusional, all 9 yards. So there's the scene where he's being questioned, and it's like, you're going to tell me your name is Scott Calvin. What is your name? Santa Claus. What is your name? Kris Kringle. like I don't know how much of that was written for him and how much of it was him doing ad lib. But I'm sorry, when he says Pierre Noel and then just like a silent giggle, I die laughing every time. Like my whole house was laughing at that. And then the flip side, so like this, I talked about that to set up the next scene, essentially, where he's like, I don't have a lot of time here. Like, the cops still think I'm a crazy person, and I need to get gifts delivered, but I needed to have this moment of, I'm paraphrasing, essentially like closure and kind of wrap things up and, mend the family, and then go on about his business. And the line delivery, I don't have much time, was pure Scott. And so that's the magic of Tim Allen's performance in this, is his ability to emote Santa and then dial it back and be Scott, and without a change in makeup or anything. If you're paying close enough attention, it's very visible, which I can appreciate.
Mm-hmm. No, you pretty much said it all, and I think we've covered pretty much everything there is to say about why this is such a fun movie. It doesn't need to really try all that hard.
No.
To be entertaining or to win you over. Yeah, I mean, is it a little bit of a product of its time? Yeah, sure. It's a Disney family comedy. It has to kind of make a few quasi hip modern references here and there, but it's soaked with them.
No, I mean, some of the clothing in the movie is a bit dated, but I would tell you, watching it in 2019, a movie made in 1994, or that comes out in 1994, I think it's timeless. I think its biggest success, the ribbon that it wears that's brightest, is that it is a timeless movie. I think you can put this on any year and any Christmas, and it's not bogged down by the time it was made in. I think it's a classic.
Not at all. Oh yeah. It's right up there with, well, like I said before, with like National Lampoons, and another great movie, actually, Scrooged, with Bill Murray.
Scrooged is good.
Yeah, kind of throw those in there as movies that, yeah, visually they may be products of their time, but I mean, you can show this to somebody from 1 to 92, and they'll find something heartwarming and fun about it.
So 8 years later comes the Santa Clause 2, which, from what and if you want to talk about this, I'm going to throw it to you. But from what I understand, like, it took 8 years because it was in development hell for a while. It has a budget of $65 million, and it's pretty successful. The worldwide box office is about $173 million.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the production notes on this?
There's really nothing.
Okay.
I mean, except for the fact that like you said, it was originally scheduled for release in November 2001. I really ended up coming out November 1st, 2002. I just didn't do a whole lot of reading up on the production notes of it, mostly because I was just kind of more interested in just the movies themselves in this case. It did change subtitles. It was initially titled The Santa Clause 2, The Escape Clause, and that would become the subtitle of the trilogy ender in 2006. So
this is all about the need for Santa to find a Mrs. Claus. And of course, he's Santa for 8 fucking years, and nobody bothers to mention this to him until the ta-da nick of time. You know, it's the month before Christmas. By the way, you need to go find a woman and get married, or you don't get to be Santa anymore. Lots of luck, pal. In the meantime, also, his son, who he has kept contact with, he has continued. He is, in as much as he can, being Santa Claus, has been the father to him that Charlie wanted as Santa than he was when he was just plain old Scott Calvin. So that's what's happened in the intervening 8 years. Oh, and by the way, his mom and stepdad now have a daughter, Lucy, I believe her name is, who, by the way, Liliana Mummy, or however you pronounce her name, is Lucy Miller, has, like, the nicest eyes I've ever seen. She has just beautiful eyes. Like, it is. I am no wonder this kid got casted in this movie and then was, like, the star of the third one. She's got, like, I was showing my wife this, we were watching it together, and I was like, holy crap, does that kid have, like, amazing movie eyes?
Yep.
Apparently she went into voice work. Life is weird. So Charlie's on the naughty list, despite, his father being there for him and all this other stuff. But there's an issue going on here, and they talk about it in the movie, that basically Charlie can't tell anyone that his father has the coolest job ever, that he's Santa. Meanwhile, a new character that has been introduced, Principal Carol Newman, played by Elizabeth Mitchell. She lost the faith in Santa many, many moons ago and was told, grow up, sissy pants. No Santa for you. So, of course, she's running a school, and she's running it well, but she's doing the Miss Hannigan thing of, do I hear children giggling? Do I hear merriment? Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. So Charlie is rebelling. You have a natural and almost antagonist in Carol, and then you have Charlie sort of brushing up against that. And so here comes Santa, Calvin, to deal with his son, and is plopped right in the middle of this thing. And, oh, by the way, he also has to find a new wife. There's a bit where he goes on a date with, oh gosh, what is her name? What is the actress's
Carol.
name?
The actress's name?
Molly Ringwald. Molly Shannon. He goes on a date with Molly Shannon, who proceeds to break into song in the middle of the restaurant, and that date doesn't go well because she seems nuts. So there's that.
It's Molly Shannon. She plays it well.
Yeah, I think all that was missing from that scene was she should have tucked her arms in her armpits and smelled them. Would have been perfect.
Superstar.
Exactly. That's how she should have ended it. So there's that. They don't do much more with it than that. It's kind of that happens, and then he gets mixed up with the principal, and they're kind of together for the rest of the movie. There's a couple of more scenes of Charlie getting in trouble and having to deal with the principal. Eventually, as this is all happening, Santa is going through a de-metamorphosis. He's turning back into Scott as his Santa magic is starting to run out. And so, by the end of it, he's pretty much back to Scott Calvin again. There's a bit where they go to the school teacher Christmas party, and of course, since there was no cheer to be had and there was no Christmas celebration at all, everyone's just kind of, ugh, I don't want to be here. And he uses his Santa magic to give them all their favorite childhood toys, and so now everyone's having a grand old time, and they're playing, and it's a magical night, and he reignites within her the spirit of Christmas. Where have you heard that before tonight? And so now she's in love with this guy. Oh, and by the way, he, in a not so slick move, I don't understand what, I'll talk about it in a minute. Instead of just showing the woman that he's Santa, he's like, oh, by the way, blah, blah, yakety schmackety, Santa Claus. Huh? And she's like, you're an asshole. Why don't you just say you don't want to commit to me? And they break up. There's an important thing that I missed, and let me talk about it now, because it's one of the funnier elements of this movie. So Santa's not here in the North Pole in Santa's workshop to keep the line moving as such. He's not there to supervise, make sure the trains are running on time, both toy and real life. He's not there to supervise, making sure things are okay. So they come up with a brilliant plan, very ahead of its time. They got to clone Santa. Okay, it's going to be a toy version of Santa, but a clone nonetheless. And this clone, like a Terminator robot, learns very rapidly. And like every other AI, and I don't know why as humanity we haven't learned that this is going to happen to us, the AI learns that the way to run things is to be a tyrant and kill all that oppose you.
I could swear I've read so many Superman cloning stories that end just exactly like this.
Every single time.
Except without a holly jolly gift giving Jesus elf.
So over the course of the film, while Scott is away, this clone Santa starts out okay. He's just a little weird. But they give him the rule book, and he starts following them to the letter and becomes a fascist dictator of the North Pole. It's frippin' hilarious.
He basically becomes totalitarian injustice Superman.
Yeah. Going as far as building his own army and putting the elves into camps. It's fantastic.
But does he use his heat vision at some point to blow a hole through David Krumholz's head?
No, it never gets that far. I'm sure that was in a draft, though. What if we gave Santa heat vision? So you've got Charlie who's having troubles. You've got a principal who you've got the Mrs. Claus issue where he's in love with this woman, but she doesn't believe he's Santa because why would she? Other than he pulled like magic out of his ass. And then he's got to go back to the North Pole to rescue it from Castro Claus.
Castro Claus.
There's an action sequence where what was it that the toy Santa was going to give everyone coal because everyone had been naughty? I think that was that he leaves the North Pole to go do something, and of course. There's a gimmick with one of the reindeers. There's Chet, who is my wife's favorite character in this whole movie. Chet, the half-retarded reindeer. I'm sorry. That thing. It was possessed by the spirit of Goofy, for fuck's sake. Like, it just comes crashing, onto the scene, stage right. He's like, whoa-wee!
Paging Benjamin J. Cologne. Please invent a character named Chet the half-retarded reindeer.
So Spedley Chet. is the only reindeer left after Santa makes off with the reindeer proper, and Tim Allen has to ride this idiot reindeer and chase after him, and they do a Fast and the Furious sleigh ride, which ends in him taking back the jacket and doing away with evil Santa. While all this is happening, Charlie seeks out the principal and confides in her that his dad is in fact Santa, and it's the reason why he's been acting like a bag of, like a half a douchebag, spray painting up the school and all of that. This is the explanation for all of my angst, and
which is that makes loads of sense. Hi, my dad has limitless gift giving capacity, and so I choose to act like more of an asshole.
He explained himself. He was just like, look, I can't, everyone else gets to talk about their father. I can't because it will take away his power when you know his magic. Okay?
Noted. But my counter argument, limitless gift-giving capacity.
Well, here's the thing. Even though, I guess we can, let me wrap up the plot synopsis and then we can come back to this, because I think this is worth talking about. It was really my only issue with this movie. While Santa and Dark Santa are having their duel in the sky, they somehow get her via portal, jetpack, I don't know, to the North Pole, and she's like, oh, well, seeing is believing. He's like, yeah, I'm fucking Santa, but if we don't get married in the next 5 minutes, I won't be Santa anymore, and this will all be for nothing. And she's like, well, I don't have any other offers. So, it's not that cynical. She understands the situation, and she loves Scott anyway, and now she realizes that he was telling her the truth all along. And so there's a very adorable scene of the elves sort of pushing them together. They are married. He is Santa. Him and Charlie go for yet another ride into the wild blue yonder and save Christmas. It's all very fantastic. And there's a cute little scene at the end of him acknowledging Lucy and then telling her to go the fuck to sleep. And so that's the Santa Clause 2. In terms of performances, I mean, there's only one new character that's introduced of note, and that's Elizabeth Mitchell as Carol Newman, who's gorgeous, by the way. She's another one with crazy Hollywood eyes, and she's just got a brilliant smile and crazy, wonderful eyes, and I think she gives a great performance in this as, somebody bereft of holiday spirit without being. She's not kick-a-puppy Scrooge. She's just, somebody who's just like, hey, we got business to attend to, and I'm in charge of this. This is my responsibility, and I take it seriously. Which, again, now as I say that out loud, it's the same problem that they have with the first movie, where you're supposed to be like, boo! Spirit of Christmas is better than all, and you're not being a nice lady, and she has to find the spirit of Christmas and and have her arc. And it's like, she's not that bad.
No. At worst, she's relatably a little bit jaded around the holidays, which, hey, again, for the sake of redundancy, relatable.
Right. But there's so much other stuff going on in this movie. Some might say a little too much at times. That, and the stuff with her and Scott getting together once that starts to happen, more than makes up for the first few scenes of her being, Principal Stalin. So it's like, it's forgivable. But I kind of wish that if you're going to make somebody, if you make the arcs a little bit more broader, I guess. Make the character, if you're going to say root against this person, or root for them to change, make the journey, I don't know, a little longer. Give it a little bit more, is all I'm saying. Flesh it out a bit.
There's not a whole lot of actual change, I think, or real character development or evolution or betterment when it comes to Scott, especially.
No, he had all the change in the first movie.
There's really not much to change here. So he's just kind of static for the most part. If anything, the real evolution is the real kind of development is, belongs to Charlie and Carol along the way, and then you kind of have the bloated addition of unnecessary characters like was it just me, or did you feel like the Council of Legendary Figures added absolutely nothing?
No.
And they were just kind of there to just have a few more colorful faces.
Well, it's a Chekhov's gun situation. They're there to set up the Tooth Fairy, who is needed at the end to accomplish a goal.
Yeah, and I mean, all love to Aisha Tyler, Michael Dorn, Art LaFleur, Kevin Pollak, Jay Thomas, and Peter Boyle. Paycheck's a paycheck, but it was.
I mean, it was used to flesh out the world.
It fleshed the world out, but I didn't feel like it really added much to what otherwise could have really been a fairly simple story.
Here's the problem: the setup is he has no Santa magic, but has to get to the North Pole to free the Resistance.
Yeah, they're plot devices.
Yeah, exactly.
They're contrivances,
and so. There's not too much time spent on them to the point where they're a distraction, and because they need one of the characters later to accomplish a goal, I was really okay with it. I didn't put too much thought into it. Like, I see what you're saying, like, it doesn't really add anything, but they're there. It makes, it tells you a little bit more about the world that, all of these, all of these holiday characters are real things, and they do a little bit more of that in the next one.
Yeah, but it's also kind of an answer to a question nobody asked. It's to borrow from Ned Flanders, it's the Lisa Simpson of the entire movie. And I got to admit, folks, here's one of the problems. I cannot recognize Michael Dorn's voice in any role without wanting to see Lieutenant Worf. Damn it, I feel robbed of Klingon Sandman.
Well, not for nothing, but they give Dorn more to do in the third one. They gave him nothing to do here. They could have put a mannequin in that spot.
And of course, when it comes to Kevin Pollak, it's a whole other problem where he's playing Cupid. He's playing the embodiment of love, and I'm sitting here and in my head, all I'm hearing is, "Fuck your father in the shower and then have a snack. You gonna charge me with something, asshole?"
Other than Aisha Davis, I feel like everybody.
Aisha
Tyler. I feel like all the other characters included in the legendary figures were like buddies of either Tim Allen or a producer, and they were like, come in for a single day shoot, put on the silly costume, here's money, like it was like a favor. I want to put my friends in the movie. Okay.
Well, hang on, let me look at something here because I think actually, this is actually Peter Boyle's second appearance.
He's
appearance in the franchise.
He's the boss, and then he's Father Time.
Yeah. I wonder if any of the grown-ups watching happened to notice that. And again, I mean, nothing against these guys getting a paycheck, but it's a big, colorful plot contrivance. Mm. It is what it is, but it doesn't have anything that kind of sticks to the ribs about it like it did with the first one. Nothing that's particularly memorable in terms of what you take away from it, except for, again, he's magical holly jolly Jesus elf. Just come to Earth and doing miracles.
So if the first one's about personal redemption, the second one is about the infectious nature of the spirit of Christmas and how it heals all wounds. Okay. And I feel like 1 and 2 are nice bookends. I think they tell a complete story, and that's probably where they should have ended.
Oh, that's definitely where it should have ended.
But we got a third one because this one was successful, and, Here come the money. Here come the money. Money, 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 money. All right, anything else about the second one before I move on?
I'm looking at the soundtrack. I'm wondering how in the crispity, crunchity, butterfingery fuck Unwritten Law and Sum 41 managed to sneak in among Brenda Lee, Steven Tyrell, the Shirelles, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Chuck Berry, Louis Armstrong, Brian Setzer, and Eddie Money.
Yeah, they were a thing in the early 2000s. What are you going to do?
Otherwise, you know what? It's one of those movies that's delightful but mediocre. I mean, you could watch it and kind of not be sorry for the hour 40 minutes that you spent, but it's not like you're really going to feel better off for it.
Like I said, I have a slightly more positive opinion on it. I rewatched it, like I said yesterday, with my family, and I like the story it tells with the first one. You know, I think it complements it really well. I think the only thing really missing, I think critically, from a craft point of view, the only problem I have with this is I wish they had fleshed out Carol a little bit more. I wish we'd spent a little bit more time with Carol absent of Tim Allen. Because Tim Allen stuff is very, very busy. It was like they knew the bones of what they wanted, but they were like, well, this isn't enough to carry an entire film, and this is a family film, so you have to make it busy for the kids. Like I can guarantee you, a movie for me focuses more on their relationship and him trying to woo her and not rushing it. My kids would have left the room. As it was, they were like, the stuff with Toy Santa was really funny. The stuff with the kids spray painting the school, like my daughter, Miss Prissy Pants, was like, well, you shouldn't do that. He's naughty. Like all that stuff they got and they were into. When they would slow down the movie and focus on the relationship between Carol and Scott, my kids were like, boo, kissing, because they're 8 and 5.
Duh.
But that's my point. When you're making G-rated family fare, not that you have to make it stupid, because we've talked about that enough, but you do have to remember that kids like busy and colorful and funny and slapstick. They're not really that much into the romance. So I think the movie does its level best to balance it, but I think it loses some of the more critical elements because it sacrifices sort of a critical depth in favor of putting more stuff for the kids to enjoy. And since it's their fucking movie, all I can say is, all right, it's not, I enjoy it, but it's not for me. And it works. It works that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you can at least kind of acknowledge, it wasn't really made with me in mind.
Right. So they double down on it. It's not for you, Sean and Mark, in this third one. This is the Back to the Future 2 of this fucking trilogy, by the way. This is the time travel one, which by itself, okay.
See, so, you say Back to the Future 2. I think it's more like the Santa. Me and these flubs tonight. The Santa Clause. The Santa Clause. That's what we should have called these two movies. The Santa Clause. It's more like the Santa Claus butt fucked It's a Wonderful Life.
That's also another way of looking at it. So, all right. So, the Santa Clause came out in 2006. So this is now 4 years later. And, it starts far enough in the future that they can go back and say, well, here's the flashback of what happened most recently. Mm-hmm. And it tells the tale of around the time of the birth of who would become Buddy Claus. Mm-hmm. And so basically this one is about family. This one is sort of a reflection on what it means to have been Santa and what this meant to the people around him, and that's this is almost literally It's a Wonderful Life in that respect. It's what happens to the world if I'm not in it, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. So she's pregnant. Mrs. Claus is pregnant and about to give birth, and she's like, as she's wont to do, she's like, I wish I had my family around me. So Scott goes back to Chicago, Illinois, picks up Lucy, Charlie. No, Charlie's away. Lucy, his ex-wife, Judge Reinhold, and he also picks up Carol's parents. But because he can't be telling everybody that he's Santa Claus or he'll lose his magic, he has to lie to the in-laws and say, I'm a toy maker from Canada. Just Canada, by the way. Not Calgary. Not Vancouver.
Canada in this one is basically the 51st state.
Yeah, I mean...
It's basically a big tumor on top of Minnesota's head.
This is like the height of lazy writing. Like, to me, this would have been... Like, South Park did a whole thing of, like a trek through Canada, and they kind of identified different regions and would change certain things based on the region, which I thought was really funny, and gave, Canada, by and large, a lot of personality. They could have picked any small town in Canada and said, that's where my toy factory is. Mm. Instead, like, nobody working on this movie knew what Canada was. They just knew it was a thing. Like, it's fucking Canada. And, like, good enough. Like it was literally like, that's the joke. So, and it just kind of ends there. It's like, no, guys, that's just lazy writing. Anyway.
Yeah, you could have even done the thing from, granted, it would have been ahead of its time if you had done this. You could have even done something like what South Park: The Stick of Truth did, where you look at a map of Canada and it's basically Westeros.
Nice. Anyway, so the whole family comes up there. Parallel to this is a plot line where Jack Frost is jealous of the power of Santa and he wants it for himself. Period. There's a little more explanation to it that they get into, but it's not. Who cares? Jack Frost, played by the one actor who really is just banging the hell out of the scenery, Martin Short, who is delightful, but he is so over the top. Like, this is literally like kid fare for idiots. That's his performance. So Martin Short plays Jack Frost, and Jack Frost feels jilted and unloved, and wants power for himself so that he can feel validated. So he hatches a plot to push Santa to the point where he wants to give up the mantle. And of course, along the way, there's a discussion of, problems at work can be fixed. It's when you have problems at home that life becomes difficult. And so he says, okay, I'm basically going to be a gremlin and try to cause as much chaos as possible so that his home life falls apart and Santa will ultimately give up the mantle through the use of trickery. And so there's a whole line, just an ongoing, endless sequence of shit going wrong that finally leads to what's supposed to be like a heartfelt moment between Tim Allen and Martin Short, where he says, I wish I'd never been Santa. And of course, there's magic involved here, and so they time travel to 12 years prior, where Santa fell off the roof. And in this particular instance, Martin Short and Tim Allen engage in a hardcore match where Tim Allen takes a shovel to the face.
EC dub? Yeah,
sure. And so Martin Short is able to then take the jacket, thus changing time. There's a sequence that occurs next where, and this is why I say it's like Back to the Future. This is now an alternate timeline where Scott Calvin never becomes Santa. And apparently, having not done so, Biff ends up with the sports almanac and everything goes to hell. So since Scott, despite the fact that they showed clearly in the first movie he was devoted to his son and trying his level best, apparently becomes a bag of dicks over the next couple of years and just stops like dealing with his family. Okay? Seems like a bit... Seems like a turn that kind of comes out of nowhere, but whatever. He does. He ignores his family, and so Charlie, having felt abandoned by his father, projects onto Judge Reinhold, causing Judge Reinhold to kind of have a meltdown, and it causes tension in the marriage, and he and Laura break up. They still have Lucy, and the gimmick is that every year since their divorce, he takes Lucy to the North Pole, which has become Disneyland North. Martin Short will... Scott goes to the North Pole to fix time and deal with and figure out how to put things back where they were so that this awful post-apocalyptic future where people don't get along happens. And he goes there and he finds to his horror that the North Pole has become, like I said, become the Magic Kingdom, complete with overpriced swag and rides and shitty shows and all that. And Jack Frost explains that, like, I didn't really want to be Santa. I just wanted to be validated. I wanted to be powerful. I wanted to be important. And so he's like, yeah. So I just said, fuck it. I'm just not going to give gifts anymore. You want to come here and pay exorbitant prices for shitty rides and food? You can have your gift here if you've got the money. And so, like, it's a commentary on the callousness and the, like, over-capitalization, materialism of Christmas. It's done in a really hackneyed and stupid way, but that's what they're doing. And so they Scott even though Lucy has no relationship with this character, somehow or other, through the magic of kismet, through the magic of Christmas, he is able to get through to this child who wants nothing to do with him, and saying, hey, go get a thing from a thing so that we can do magic and set things right. And so Jack Frost is double-crossed, and he is recorded saying, I don't want to be Santa, which he said in mocking Tim Allen. And so that sets things right. And they are thrown back in time, and this time they are on the lawn long enough for the original Tim Allen from 12 years ago to come out and put the coat on, which sets time back the way it was. The Infinity Stones are given back to the rightful owners. The Sports Almanac is put back in the case. Everything works out. It's all fine.
Clarence got his wings.
Yes. So, in one of the more villainous moments of the movie, Jack Frost had also frozen Lucy's parents, which is like the one last thread that they have to deal with. They had set up earlier that the snow globes are magical, and basically Lucy, unbeknownst to her, is endowed with a bit of Christmas magic. Her hugs are nuclear. She's fucking Firestorm, don't you understand? So the Human Torch walks over to Martin Short and gives him a big old hug, and by melting him, like by unfrosting him, her parents are then unfrosted because he won't reverse his magic, and he's no longer Jack Frost. He's Bob the Cabana Boy. I'm not really sure what happened to him, but he's in a suit. He enjoys the heat. He's drinking margaritas. It's all a grand, all is forgiven, despite the fact that he lied to Santa, and they had already told him if he had screwed around, they were going to banish him from the legendary figures. But no, I think at this point the writers were just so tired of this movie they just stopped writing. They're like, whatever, we don't care anymore. Just
fucking make him Ed Grimley.
Exactly.
As long as we're letting comedians fan service.
Yeah, not for nothing, but that would have been a better ending if he, like, instead of like being in a zoot suit, and having a weird hair, he should have just like turned into Ed Grimley and danced off screen. It would have been great.
That would have been right up there with the Wayne's World Scooby-Doo ending.
Yeah,
for best way to cap off a film ever.
And Scott decides that there shall be no more lies amongst the family, and so his in-laws finally understand why, they've been away for so long and why there's been so much secrecy and privacy. Everything is out in the open now, and the family loves each other, and we have a happy ending, and it's all good. Okay, this fucking movie. So let me tell you my favorite part of this movie, and like basically the only part I enjoy watching.
Mm-hmm.
The alternate universe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wish they had gotten to the alternate universe in the first 30 minutes of the movie. Like, I wish the bulk of the second act was Tim Allen not remembering he was Santa and living in this world where everything is shitty. His son doesn't talk to him. His wife's a fucking wreck. You know, I would have loved to have seen, you know, they rushed through the North Pole. I thought that stuff at the North Pole was actually really funny. And like, as an editorial on the materialization of Christmas, mm-hmm. I thought that was great. And I kind of wanted to spend more time with that. But before that, I wanted to spend more time in this parallel universe where Scott was shitty. I would have liked to have seen, like, what led up. Like, instead of he's it's the same year, but it's in this parallel universe. Like, they do the dusting, essentially. They turn into Christmas magic. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of would like, you know, like the year after the original, like maybe like go back to the original moment in the Santa Clause where, you know, where they, you know, he walks outside and it's like, oh, it's nothing, Charlie. And he walks back in and you kind of see, showing how he became distant from Charlie. And and so that when you finally get to present day, it makes a little bit more sense. Because in all honesty, for him to have changed that much with no explanation was way too jarring.
And, you know, if you would have done that, the movie would have at least conveyed something that you could have kind of... I hate to use the word depth when it comes to anything in this franchise, because that's just kind of not what it's all about. But it would have at least kind of given you something to sort of ruminate on.
Yeah.
A little. At least a little bit.
Because it takes forever to get there.
Yeah, as opposed to the movie just kind of devolving into a masterclass in contrivance.
Well, that's the problem. Like I said, like Jack Frost spends a good hour of that movie being a gremlin. He's like, you know, twisting things and first of all, no one noticed he was freezing things, and like machines were blowing up left and right. And so this is all. So again, this is the parallel to the first movie where Scott's a workaholic. Which, again, I'm not going to recover the same territory, but people already know how I feel about that. So,
yeah.
So in addition to him not focusing on his wife like he should and focusing on being Santa, also everything is blowing up around him, and of course it's happening right in the in-laws' face, and so he looks like, so the whole thing just looks sketch, you know, especially with a pregnant woman around. You could have done that in 2 or 3 sequences. You didn't need an entire hour to establish that. It's just an endless fucking barrage of stupid shit. To the point where I started fast forwarding the movie. Like, I couldn't watch it anymore. Like I get to like once everyone gets to the North Pole and there's more of Jack just fucking with people, I'm like, I can't. So. But then we get to the parallel universe, and I'm like, oh, this is my favorite part of the movie. Like, this is like genuinely the part of the movie that I love about the escape clause. It's just rushed. They literally deliver 12 years of exposition in one scene in a few sentences. Like, what happened? Well, with you not around being the father you should have, and then they repeat it later on. Like what happened to you and Laura? And like, well, you know, Charlie fucking hates me because you weren't there for him. All right.
What didn't we go over something like this when it came to? It was one of the Die Hard movies. You had a question like, what the hell happened between these two?
Yeah. Yeah, I was.
Which one was it?
I think it's like from 2 to 3. Yeah, it was from 2 to 3, where like by the end of 1, he's made back up with his wife. In 2, him and his wife were fine. He was just having trouble getting to her because the airport was taken over by hostages.
Yeah,
and then in the 3rd one, he went back to New York, a shell of the man he used to be. Like, what the fuck happened here? And, like, I get, like, writers sit in a room like, well, what else can we do with this character? Oh, we'll do this to him. Fine. But you have to do more than just exposition dumps.
God damn it. Once more, we're talking about Christmas movies and we come back to fucking Die Hard. God damn you, Tim Allen.
That's my biggest problem with this is, you know, you use the word contrivance, and this movie's just so full of them to the point, you know, where it becomes cringy and hard to watch. This is a lot of, like, Three's Company kind of stuff.
Well, but the problem with contrivances almost always becomes they divert characters from ever having to actually earn anything and actually apply what they've learned. It just becomes, you can turn to, you said Chekhov's gun. That just sort of becomes your easy out, and then actually acting on the lesson that you've learned becomes not so much your kind of path to peace and resolution or absolution or what have you. It just kind of becomes like a cherry on top. It becomes an afterthought.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what kind of would have been nice, like you said, if they would have spent a little more time in the Elseworld, where Scott has to kind of deliberate and ruminate a little bit on what the past 12 years have meant and what the world would have been if he had never made that fateful decision, whereas that never really feels like it completely hits home because, again, you know, you've got Chekhov's gun just still sitting there on the wall going, for fuck's sake, take me down and shoot someone. It's like it's right there, and you just want to go grab the gun, just get it over with, grab the fucking gun. There's the gun, grab the fucking gun, take the gun, take the goddamn fucking take the gun, put it in my mouth, shoot me, and put me out of this last 90 minutes of boredom.
I would have loved for, like I said, for Scott to have woken up and he doesn't remember he's Santa, and he's kind of just going through things. And I think it would have been a stronger use of Lucy had he run into her and she remembers, like she like intrinsically knows. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. Nobody else does, but this kid somehow, like, it's fucking Santa magic. Who gives a shit? You know, she somehow held on to in the back of her mind those memories. And so when she sees Scott, who, like, and she hasn't seen Scott like almost ever because he fell out with the family, which again they should have showed you. And then like she sees him and she's like, I have like this feeling, you know, like you were meant for more than this. And like coming from that kid, like what? You know, and he starts to remember, and then, you know, then when he sees like the flyer for the North Pole, like take her and Judge Reinhold out of the fucking North Pole. Like that should have just been the showdown between him and Jack. You know, and because I think you can still do that ending. I also think that like being tricked into giving up Santa is not nearly as strong as if he had been punished. You know, like I think if he, like, you can't go too dark, but I think if he had gotten to a place where he legit didn't want to be Santa anymore because it was getting too hard, and like one of the legendary such and such took the power away from him, and then Jack Frost jumped in on that moment, because I think you can still do that scene, just tweak it a little bit so that, you know, he's legit being like punished. Like, instead of being hit with a fucking shovel and missed a shitty wrestling match, like, he's just frozen. Like, he has to watch it happen magically. Mm-hmm. You know, like, let there be some, you know, a real lesson, like you were saying, like a real lesson to be learned here, in not taking for granted what good you have in your life. I think it becomes too much like this had a lot of that Jingle All the Way feel to it, where it loses its sense of what the point of the movie is in favor of doing a lot more slapstick. And since the whole first hour of the movie was a lot of slapstick, I was just over it by that point. So yeah, the escape clause. I love this trilogy, and I think if I'm not thinking about this movie because Jack Frost looks cool, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and everyone's performances are as good, like we talked about before. So there's a lot that works in the movie, but the big plot elements that we were just discussing, if I think about it, I'm like, oh, this movie sucks.
Yeah, God love Martin Short. He is determined to have fun with this almost in spite of the material.
I was just like, he has to know it's dumb. But he's like, well, they're paying me, and I'm a professional, and I'm Martin Short, and I can make this fun. So anything else about the escape clause?
I got nothing. It's just like I said. It's like the Santa Claus just bent "It's a Wonderful Life" over the table, and the result was we get this weird, unnecessary Elseworld story that could have done more had it just not been so damn lazy. And paycheck's a paycheck. Let's see here. Hang on a sec. 5 Razzie nominations. Tim Allen was nominated for Worst Actor. Tim and Martin were nominated for Worst Screen Couple. Martin was nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. And the movie was nominated for Worst Prequel or Sequel and Worst Excuse for Family Entertainment.
Perfect.
The best review that I saw said, or the best 2 reviews were, Eric D. Snyder wrote that Alan did the Santa Claus the first time with enthusiasm, the second time with affection, and the third time for a paycheck. And Kyle Smith said, we're getting a turkey and a ham for the holidays. Santa is so dumb he should be demoted to cleaning up after Jeffrey the Giraffe at Toys R Us.
Yes. And Manola Dargis dismissed the film as squeaky clean, but you might die of boredom.
I will see your squeaky clean, but you might die of boredom, and raise you the cinematic equivalent of tertiary syphilis. Yikes.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
That's fucking killing an ant with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, that's a bit rough.
Oh my god, this had a video game tie-in?
It certainly did, Ollie.
Jeez. Let's see here. First 2 films. Evidently, as opposed to the first 2 being box office hits, this one was beaten out by Borat on its opening weekend.
Because early 2000s.
Yeah. $12 million budget, made $110.8 million. So,
you know what? The accountants at Disney, I'm sure were happy, but probably said, "I think it's enough of this."
Ka-ching-a-ching-ching.
Yep. All right. So all in all, we have 2 out of 3 good movies. Yeah. I think as as holiday viewing material for the family. Look, I say this often. We are doing a podcast where we're doing like heavy film criticism. Heavy film criticism. We critiqued it.
God, that's a term that's going to come up with us again.
We're doing heavy film criticism. We're doing deconstructionism. That's the point of the podcast, and that's the kind of thing that I enjoy. Don't think I was doing that while I was watching this initially with my family. Look, we were just having fun watching it. I was more watching my kids and seeing their reactions. I think if you watch the trilogy around the holidays, it's good fun for the whole family. No one's going to give a shit about that third one. Like, they're going to watch it, and it's fine, and Martin Short's entertaining, and there's a lot of funny stuff that happens. if you're like the average ham and egger movie watcher, I think if you're into film and you're listening to this, you'll get it and you'll be like, yeah, Escape Clause sucks. All right, like, no argument there. But I think like people who wouldn't normally listen to this podcast would think the movie is fine. You know what I mean? Like, they're not putting that much thought into it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And again, the last few years have been beset with so many people that have been trying just a little bit too hard to be subversive with the Christmas movies they sort of won't shut up about. So, I mean, if you gotta pop in a few movies just because you want to go a little more traditional with your holiday fare and you just amazingly just can't stand watching Die Hard and Gremlins one more time, you know what? We're talking about one modern classic and a very okay but still fun sequel, and then
Syphilis.
this. Yeah, and then eggnog flavored tertiary syphilis.
First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes syphilis you got from Tinder. The Santa Clause. As Sean catches his breath, the next time you get to see us together will be January 2nd. We shall begin the year anew. First week of the year is always trying to... You good?
No! You asking me if I'm good, and you... I want to put into perspective what you just achieved here. I want you to think about every artistic variation I've put on the word fuck over the past 7 years you and I have been podcasting. And you just made me utterly lose my shit by singing first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the syphilis you got from Tinder. In the context of us having just spent 90 minutes talking about the Santa Claus, we pivot to syphilis.
Well, that's what people paid their money for. That kind of analysis. So yes, the first week of while Sean composes himself, the first week of the year we always do something kind of off the beaten path, something that doesn't lend itself to things going on in the present day media. So we're going to look back at a film classic. We're going to do an on trial for Fight Club, and then Source Material is actually going to look also at the Fight Club 2 comic that came out. Yes, there was actually a Fight Club 2 and 3 by Godfrey. In the meantime, here's all the shows that you can check out in the archive. You've got Teen Titans by Jeff Johns, issues 1 through 12, Knives Out, Rings of Saturn, Get 'em Jit 'em, Lady and the Tramp from Disney Plus, Titan Season 2, Overeem versus Rosenstrike. We also did our boxing Chapter 2, Jack Dempsey, The Crown Season 3 with our Canadian contingent, Gotham Central Book 2, because you got to keep the Joker down in the hole. We did our year-end Life of Metal Hammer of Doom. We didn't do a Christmas show this year because there wasn't really anything good to cover. But instead, we ended out the show with a Christmas gift to all of you. We not only reviewed the latest Life of Agony album, The Sound of Scars, but as it turns out, it's the spiritual successor to the seminal Life of Agony album, River Runs Red, one of my personal favorites. To me, one of the best rock and roll albums of all time. So we reviewed them both on an exceptionally long Metal Hammer of Doom podcast. I mean, it's no Damn You Hollywood where we've gone for 3 hours screaming at one another, but it was up there, man. We had a good time. So one show, 2 album reviews. Tomorrow night, Friday night, John War will be on the network. We'll do some commentary for Ortiz Jr. versus Solomon on DAZN. And then on Saturday, more commentary with the man, Robert Winfrey. We'll be doing commentary for Usman versus Covington. Next week, we've got Runaways by Rainbow Rowell, Damn You Hollywood, Jumanji 3. We'll do a TV party for The Runaways Season 3. The final season of The Runaways, and I think the last of the Marvel TV series. No, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will be the last one. Close to the last one before they close up shop on Marvel TV and everything moves to Marvel Productions via Disney Plus and traditional movies. And finally, myself and Chris Bailey will be reviewing TLC from the WWE. And then it's Star Wars and Christmas. Yay! God damn it. So look for those shows when they pop up on the network. Also, The Unspoken Decade from Jesse and his good friends at the Unspoken Issues with his good friends at the Unspoken Decade. It's all here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. And Sean's going to tell you about all the rest of the things that aren't here. Go, Sean.
About the only thing that I've got to tell you about is the fact that you can catch me 3 nights of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, over at twitch.tv/Comer Codex. For those who have never watched my streaming, I am an avid gamer. I kind of play a little bit of everything in the sum total of my time, but on stream I mostly focus on PvP games. Particularly, you can expect a lot of Overwatch with occasional diversions into Mortal Kombat 11, Smite, Rainbow Six Siege, and Dead by Daylight. However, since I am a proud member of Hunters of Artemis, you can find me over at twitch.tv/Hunters of Artemis Friday night from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central Time, and Friday from 5 to 9 p.m. Central Time. Saturday from 5 to 9 p.m. Central Time, as Carrie just corrected me. Once more, Saturday I'm guaranteed to be playing Overwatch. Tomorrow night, I'm a little bit undecided, thinking about continuing my quest in competitive to rank up. I'm trying to go from bronze, the bottom, all the way up to Grandmaster. No time limit on it. Just, come watch me suffer, play, win, lose, cry, and cheer. Through one of the most bizarre competitive scenes in all PvP gaming. Tomorrow night, though, might jump into probably either Siege or Smite, just for a little bit of a break. But if you want to keep up on what I'm going to be streaming when, you can follow me on Twitter at Comer Codex, ComerCodex. And yeah, I'm kind of winding down for the holidays. So I'm going to be taking it a little bit easy between now and January 1st. But after the first of the year, myself and the rest of the Radulich and Broadcasting family, we are coming out guns a-blazing.
All right, thank you for joining us in this special holiday edition of The Long Road to Ruin. For Sean Comer, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave. And once again, happy holidays.
Decorating with Duncan.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, and look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in at Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer. It's decorating with Duncan.
Hey, your desk looks great. Really festive with all the decorations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this Dunkin' Peppermint Mocha Latte gave me a little pick-me-up, and I decided to go for it.
Whoa, you even lined your desk drawers with musical lights?
Yep, And look what's inside. A Dunkin' Gingerbread S'mores Latte for you.
Get holiday in a Dunkin' with a $2 medium latte, cappuccino, or Americano from 2 to 6 p.m. The holidays run on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.